It's been nearly 25 years since that night, and for most of my life, I convinced myself it was just a dream, some strange twisted figment of my teenage imagination. I mean, what else could it have been, right? But over the years, after reading story after story of people describing things eerily similar to what I experienced, I can't shake the feeling anymore. I'm almost certain it was real. I was 16 at the time. It was a regular school night, but I'd stayed up way too late, working on some project that had me glued to my desk for hours. By the time I finally finished, it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. The house was dead silent, just the faint sounds of the night outside filtering through my window. I was exhausted, my body heavy as I crawled into bed, and within minutes, I was out cold. At first, there was nothing unusual, just the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who'd pushed themselves too hard. But then, out of nowhere, I woke up. Not fully, but enough to be aware of something off. The room felt different. There was this strange energy, something heavy in the air that immediately made me uneasy. I brushed it off, thinking it was the aftermath of staying up too late, but that sense of tension clung to me. Little did I know, the night was just beginning, and what I was about to experience would stay with me for the rest of my life. I don't know how long I had been asleep, but I woke up to this weird, tapping sensation on my shoulder. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was groggy, still half in a dream, but the tapping was gentle, almost rhythmic, like someone trying to wake me up without startling me. Instinctively, I opened my eyes, still blurry from sleep, and that's when I saw it. An arm, a hand pulling away from me, like it had just been touching my shoulder. In that hazy moment, I assumed it was my little sister. She'd done that a few times before, waking me up because of a nightmare or something. "Hey, what's up?" I mumbled, still not fully awake, squinting in the dim light. There was just enough moonlight filtering through the window for me to make out her small figure standing there beside my bed. But something wasn't right. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I froze. It wasn't her. The shape, the size, it was all wrong. And then I really looked at its face. Or rather, what should have been its face. That's when my heart stopped. The head. It wasn't normal. It had this weird, dull glow, and the skin looked wrong, almost like dried out, peeled fruit. Like an old, shriveled orange, kind of brownish. And the eyes, there were no eyes. Just these deep, empty holes where they should have been. I couldn't move. My mind was struggling to catch up with what I was seeing, trying to convince myself that this was some kind of trick of the light, but I knew, deep down, that what I was looking at wasn't my sister. This thing, it wasn't human. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at it, frozen in place. That thing, whatever it was just standing there watching me. Or at least, I think it was watching me, but it had no eyes. Just two deep, black holes where they should have been. Its head was this weird brown color, all shriveled up like a dried-out orange with no skin. It looked unnatural, like something rotting and dried at the same time. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My throat tightened, and all I could do was stare. Then it did something that made my blood run cold. It tilted its head back, like it was laughing. But no sound came out. Its mouth stretched open wide, and I could see it laughing, but it was silent, mocking me. It was almost worse than if I'd heard a sound. It just stood there, pointing at me with this long, bony finger, and then it started moving. Slowly, it made its way toward the foot of my bed, its body swaying slightly, like it was playing some kind of sick game. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but there was nothing human about this thing. It was like it was enjoying my fear, feeding off of it, savoring every second. I tried to move, tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't respond. My hand was shaking as I reached for the lamp on my nightstand, my eyes never leaving it. It just kept coming closer, slowly, deliberately, like it had all the time in the world. Then once again, it threw its head back and silently laughed, pointing at me as if I was the punchline to some cosmic joke. I knew I had to do something, but my mind was blank, paralyzed by the sight of that thing. It was almost at the end of my bed now, and I could feel the air getting colder. This wasn't a dream. This was real. I fumbled with the lamp, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely grip the switch. My eyes were glued to the thing as it moved closer, inching its way around the foot of my bed. I could feel the terror gripping my entire body, freezing me in place, but I knew if I didn't turn on that light, something terrible would happen. Finally, my hand found the switch, and with a quick flick, the dim light flooded the room. And just like that, it was gone. The thing vanished. One second it was there, mocking me, creeping closer, and the next, nothing. It was as if it had never been there at all. The space where it stood was now empty, the air feeling heavy with the silence that followed. I was still screaming, my voice raw and desperate, unable to stop. My heart pounded so hard in my chest it felt like it might explode. I just kept staring at the empty spot, expecting it to reappear, but the room stayed quiet, eerily still. A few seconds later, my dad came bursting through the door, looking panicked. "What's going on? What happened?" he asked, his eyes wide as he scanned the room. I could barely speak, still shaking, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I pointed to where the thing had been, but the words wouldn't come out. He laughed, shaking his head. "It was just a nightmare, son. Calm down, you're okay," he said, trying to reassure me. But I wasn't okay. I knew what I'd seen, and no matter how much I wanted to believe it was just a dream, deep down, I knew it was real. My dad left the room after a few minutes, still chuckling to himself, telling me to calm down and go back to sleep. But sleep was the last thing on my mind. I couldn't shake what I had just experienced. I sat up in bed, staring at the spot where that thing had stood, my heart still racing, my mind running in circles. Every shadow in the room felt like it could come alive at any moment, and I stayed wide awake for the rest of the night, unable to close my eyes for even a second. For years, I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just a dream, that maybe my dad was right, and I'd let my imagination run wild. But deep down, I knew what I saw that night was real. I can still feel the cold sweat on my skin, still hear that silent laugh as the creature mocked me, its hollow eyes staring straight through me. I never saw it again after that night. Nothing strange ever happened in the house again, but the memory of that thing still lingers, just below the surface, haunting me every time I'm alone in the dark. Sometimes, I find myself wondering what it really was. A ghost? A demon? Or something else entirely? Part of me wants to know, but the other part of me is still terrified by the idea of ever facing it again. It's been almost 25 years, and I still don't have answers. But one thing is certain, I'll never forget that night. And I'll never stop feeling that icy chill crawl up my spine when I think about it.